Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. Welcome to this session. My name is Darnell. I've been working in Jersey City at the Jersey City Free Public Library for 23 years, and I've been working with adults for all of that time. Normally, I would ask for introductions and ask folks to give their names and so forth, but I see that we have a number of people on the screen. And so instead of doing that, I'm going to just simply ask you to kind of give me an idea of maybe like 5 of you, how many years have you been working with adults? Because we only have 1 hour for this workshop. So who wants to share? How many years have you been working with adults? Anybody? Can you all hear me?
Yes. You want us to,
Okay.
you want us to
Just how
Okay.
many years? Yeah,
So,
you can
Darnell,
answer.
Darnell, can you not see the chat? So
Oh, okay. Let me see. I didn't
no,
see
it's
the
okay. I can
chat.
read the chat for you. So anywhere between 3, 7, 20, 30 plus, 1.5 years. So a real variety, Darnell.
I got it. I see the chat up above. I
Okay.
was looking for it below. Great. Wonderful. So you all are experienced working with adults. Because I've been working with adults, I found that I sort of had to change my perception a little bit. And so I'm going to share with you some things that from my research that I learned from working with adults. So, you know, our adults come to us and most of the times they are motivated, but for some reason they end up not getting exactly what they want. They kind of stop out. So many of us have taught adults in various educational settings because we want to help them achieve certain goals. But we've never really stopped to, some of us have never really stopped to understand the way adults actually learn. And I was curious as to why did some people actually get their high school diploma or achieve whatever goals they had set out to do and others didn't. So who is learning? We have here adults who dropped out of school. Some of them want their high school diploma. We have some who have come to the United States with diplomas from their own countries, but because they want to get into college, they need to take another test here in the US. We have adults who show a US high school diploma, who must show a US high school diploma to begin college here. And we also have adults who want to earn higher levels of education just for simply to advance in their jobs or just for personal satisfaction. And of course, we have adults who are lifelong learners because they just want to keep on learning. Can any of you add to this list? Maybe some of you might have some things you want to add to this list. Another category, anyone? And I promise I'll check the chat to see what you put in here if you don't want to speak. Okay, someone said they don't have any sound. Okay, does anyone want to add to this chat? Okay, I will move on. Astrid, did you want to say something? Seems like Astrid wanted. Students who are mandated to attend to get benefits. I agree. And someone else said, here's another one. Okay, there's another one here. Oh, someone said they think I covered it all. Okay. Terry, are you having problems logging in? I see a message here. I hope everyone can hear.
Yeah, Terry says she's okay, Darnell.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Thank
Darnell,
you.
I'm monitoring that
monitor
sort of
this?
stuff. So just worry
Okay.
about your content.
Got you. Thank you. So let's move on. Thank you. Now, what is really the problem? We have here that millions of adults do participate in adult learning programs in the United States every year. But at least according to the statistics, half of these adults leave their programs or whatever institution they're learning before they officially complete the requirements for graduation. Let's look at why some adults do stop participating. We have lack of socialization, maybe lack of time. Are they really motivated? Some of us say they're not motivated. Are they happily employed? Are they happy with where they are in this stage of their lives? And interestingly enough to me was resistance. Some of them resist learning new things. Do we have any additions to this list? Would anyone like to add anything else here? I'll give some time for response. Okay. Let's continue. Perceptions of adult educators. Educators, how do you perceive the challenges and barriers that are involved in engaging adult learners in adult education? And what goes through the minds of adult educators when learners really stop attending classes? Do you sometimes feel like maybe, I hate to say it, but some people have said this, that they failed at teaching the adult properly? What are your perceptions? Have you ever felt guilty about perhaps not reaching that learner? Anyone, you can drop a comment in the chat if you'd like. Okay. I don't think there's anything here.
No, so Darnell, you have to give it a second. So for example, Freddie said that he doesn't feel bad that because there's some things out of their control. There's really nothing you can do about it. And other folks suggest that, you know, they don't feel guilty and they try to help with other suggestions, and that they, you know, they do feel bad that there's not more social services that they can't provide. And that there's also dispositional things where students feel like they're over their heads and maybe that they lack confidence, that they wish that they could help them in those ways.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. And someone, you mentioned dispositional. We actually are going to come up on that in a little while. And that was interesting. I think you said, I don't remember the person's name, but you said that the person said that they don't feel guilty because there are just some things that we can't do. And sometimes no matter how much we try to help them and no matter what changes we try to make, sometimes it just doesn't work out. So here are some of the barriers that I put together. Of course, there might be more, but we have situational barriers, institutional barriers, the attitudinal barriers, we have academic barriers. Let's take a look at the breakdown of some of them. So with situational barriers, we have here where it consists of broad incidental conditions. that would actually restrain the adult learners from obtaining access and engaging in learning opportunities. You know, some of them really, truly want to do it, but maybe they live too far, or they don't have transportation, or some other things come up in their lives where they really cannot attend. We also have barriers here where are manifested when the institutions are unable to identify the importance of actually including resources and services that really meet the needs of our learners. So it is crucial to understand how the barriers may cause one not to advance academically or prevent access to resources. We also have barriers here where they might consist of conflicting obligations regarding the home, family, work. We have the financial crisis, lack of satisfactory and affordable childcare services. And you can see the list here on the screen. At this point, I'd like to ask if anyone has experienced any type working with students. Have you experienced any type of these barriers?
So do what, just the situational barriers, Darnell?
Right now, just situational, right?
Yep, so folks in the chat. Yeah, Karen says all the time. Georgina is.
Okay. Let's go on. We have the institutional barriers
Sorry,
where,
Darnell, one of the things that Irene added, that some students' job hours change, right? And so when their job hours change, it's difficult to make the adjustment. Ingrid notes that identifying the learning disabilities that students have and getting the best support for them or teach them to the techniques. So yeah, there are these kind of barriers.
okay. Thanks, Eric. And I have to remember to wait for for them to actually type their comments. Thank you for that. And so we have some institutional barriers, and back to the comment where someone said their work hours change. I know I have been in situations where this has happened to a lot of learners. And with all good intentions, they really want to continue. And sometimes it breaks my heart when we try to work around the schedules and you just cannot get their schedules right for them to continue. And so they must stop out. So here we have some institutional barriers where the levels, the location, and attendance affect the learning process. So those institutional barriers we see are restrictions that inherent in the strategies and foundations that are used to configure, convey, and oversee the learning exercises. Institutional barriers could incorporate the complexities of giving financial assistance to learners for tuition and educational supplies. And remember that this is not, I'm not talking only about literacy, adult literacy programs here, or some programs that are actually, you know, social service programs. I'm also talking about maybe where some learners are attending community college or something like that, and they end up having to stop for some of these reasons. And sometimes also institutions tend to label learners as being at risk. And sometimes because of that, they just don't do anything else with the students. I've experienced that with some of our learners here, where it's just like leaving them alone because they can't figure out what else to do. So it says here, learners who are unable to make academic and social achievements are usually classified as at-risk learners. And sometimes you have learners of color that who are more often labeled as academically underprepared, and they require remediation at a significantly higher rate in comparison to Caucasian and other students' population. So this label is often considered an institutional barriers because the learners are now perceived to be low performers. So if you have any questions while I'm going along, you can just simply raise your hand. I want to make sure that we get everything in the time frame that's allotted to us. So let's look at attitudinal or dispositional barriers. I'll give you a moment to read the screen. So we have some individuals, of course, who will come into programs or start a class, start, let's say, community college maybe, or even probably had finished community college and moved on, but sometimes they feel as if they can't go the next step. They can't go to do the next round of learning. And I'm saying sometimes we have learners, but in essence, maybe some of you can relate to the same type of information here, where maybe you really wanted to go forward and you stopped. But because we're talking about learners here today, hopefully you'll be able to get, use this information later on when you're working with your students. Here also we have the academic barriers. So some learners are really motivated to engage in the academic task because they want to learn. And some are extrinsically motivated. They engage in academic tasks to earn some type of reward, to avoid an externally imposed punishment, or to make a decision based on something they desire. So these academic barriers refer to the abilities that are fundamental to effective learning. And one of the major academic barriers is sometimes there is a lack of engagement between learners and instructors, counselors, and tutors. Thinking back of since we got into COVID-19, I tend to see this come into play a lot more often because now sometimes we don't have that face-to-face interaction with the learners, and some learners are somewhat disengaged. They don't feel connected to their classmates, or they don't feel connected to the instructor where they can walk up to the instructor or whomever and ask a question directly. And so learners tend to feel disconnected from others. They do not feel a sense of belonging and community presence. And the ability to learn and the inclination to succeed in education are vital factors that would affect the choice of them enrolling in ABE classes. And of course, we should always be aware of the reasons why adults actually participate in classes, so that we can design legitimately to motivate these adult learners and help them to continue attending their classes. So someone walks into your classroom and you just start teaching a class. I've seen this happen actually, where people never try to figure out anything about the learner. Some people have just simply said, okay, let's open the book to page 22, or whatever the page is, and they start teaching, and they never try to get that connection with the learner. And of course, that person actually does not feel sometimes that they have that connection with the instructor or with the other students in the class. So now let's look at some approaches to adult learning. And this is something that I really like to look at, is that we consider the whole person, because it's not just necessarily that the person is just coming to class, you know the name, you know the first name, you know the last name, but no one ever really sometimes stops and look at the whole person. So that whole person is made up of mind, body, and spirit. How does that person think? So really, however, are the body and spirit taken into account when we talk about learning, according to Miriam Caffarella and Baumgartner. And I've been reading the book of these three authors, which actually talks about learning in adulthood. And that's what really impressed me upon doing this workshop. So embodied learning is linked to experiential learning. I'm pretty sure all of you know about experiential learning. We need to engage learners throughout the whole learning process. Learning is accessed through our senses, actually. So imagine that you're going to, let's say, for instance, you're going to the gym, you're working with a personal trainer or something like that. If you just simply go to that class or that session with your personal trainer and don't feel that connection with maybe your body changing or how you are actually doing the exercises, sometimes it really doesn't make any sense to go. So you have to have that connection. We relate our experience, our information to our experience, and from that we extrapolate meanings which are actually significant to our lives. Meaning that if I don't feel as if this is helping me, I am not going to come back tomorrow. Sometimes this is what happens. Now, how can we as educators play a more intricate role in the lives of adult learners? And I talked about this before, where we should have that connection to the learner, and don't simply rely on statistics. You know, I remember I recall being in a meeting just recently, and I think it was with the Department of Labor. And I was happy to see that they were actually asking us to give anecdotes about the learners in the program. Because from my observation for the past couple of years, there was a shift towards just simply statistics. And I've always said, well, you know, stats don't really tell the whole story. They tell part of the story, but if we can't really share those anecdotes, sometimes our funders and so forth for different programs don't really know exactly what else is happening with the learners. And I find that it's also important. The only way we can really know what's happening with them is to listen to them, to make time, take time out so that we can listen to what they have to say. And I'll tell you that I've learned a lot by just simply listening to them. And sometimes it's not related to the course that we're teaching. It's not related to the subject of that day, the topic, but just simply listening to them when they talk to other learners in the class, or simply when they just want to talk. You listen to them and you learn so much more about them. And here it says, fill the gaps where learners may need additional instruction or explanation to understand some concept. Sometimes they don't really come out and tell you, well, you know, I really need a little more help with this. I didn't understand what was said. Some people are ashamed to speak up and so forth. And so we have to always try to find out what is lacking, what is missing.